everyone talks about this Aiyuk guy. Frankly, I tell you, and this may shock people or whatever, but he's not utilized in the Niners philosophy like he should be. So from my perspective, he's being wasted right now. Mm-hmm. I would have traded Aiyuk and got players and or draft picks because he's never going to be utilized and worth the amount of money they're going to pay him for what he's going to do in the Niner offense, because the Niner offense is not designed to take advantage of what Aiyuk does best. So that's not a good fit. You might like the guy. He may look great out there in shorts, running the routes in practice and all that. But on game day, how many shot plays does this kid get?
2 a year?
Yeah. And see, that, for what I'm going to have to pay him, that's not worth it. But right. I can get something worth it by trading him to Buffalo or someone else who could. Josh Allen would love to have Aiyuk in Buffalo. Oh, my God, he would salivate on that one.
Would Al Davis have wanted him?
Oh, yeah. You know, I look at just like having when Mike Martz, my former college classmate, was running the Ram show, you know, he had all those great receivers. Mm-hmm. Aiyuk would have fit right in there with those guys. With
Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt. Yep.
Oh, there's no question about it. But on the Niners, you know, now you see, you go back, I look at Jerry Rice, I look at John Taylor and the Niners, the receivers they had then. Bill was able to utilize them with the slants and the timed routes and the hooks, and then he'd take up in slot. He'd run Dino, he'd run scissors, and he'd run razor and some of those concepts, and he would set up a deep shot every once in a while. But I tell you what, Aiyuk probably in Bill's mind would be what he would have wished that Freddie Solomon would have been, or that he would have wished that Ronaldo Nehemiah would have been. Mm. And see, that's Aiyuk today. And see, Bill would have found a way to get him the ball down the field.
Interesting. But it's hard to find the way to get the ball down the field when your offensive line really can't pass protect. And that was one of the reasons they lost the Super Bowl.
Well, and the other thing is, the best way they can do it, if they can't do it off a pure drop back, it's got to be off of play action. So their shot passes. And see, here's the other thing, Grant, I think is critical. And we at the Raiders always to believe this. You don't just call a pattern with a specific route to the receiver. You give them options on it. Okay, let's say we're running a fire pass with aggressive offensive line blocking protection. We're selling the run. I'm going to give Aiyuk an option. I'm going to say, okay, you're going to run the post. Now, if you're even, you're leaving. If you know what I mean by that. If you're even with the DB, you're leaving. Okay. If you can't catch him, I want you to slam on the brakes 17, 18 yards and hook it up in the hole. So you have an option. I'm not just running the post and having a dead route because the DB is deeper than that and you can't catch him because they're laying back in the weeds, but we're going to slam on the brakes and you're going to run the hook. And that's part of the package. We would take a guy like Branch and put him in the slot or put him down in a nasty location and put Marcus outside wide or whatever and say, okay, you're going to run down the field. You got the seam route. Okay, if the middle of the field's open, you're going to rock and roll and hit the hole in cover 2. If it's man high, safety high versus man, you're going to run the square in. If it's 3 deep zone and you can't go by the secondary, you're going to hook it up. So you got 4 options. So I can get the ball to Branch when I want. I don't want to go through the whole ball game and be Bill and say, geez, Joe, we didn't get the ball to Jerry. Well, you know, like we called flanker drive and they did this. And we called this and they did that. We tried to run a juke route and they did that. You got to have options for the receiver. You just can't call a route in a pattern and bam, that's what you're running.
Because if you do that, then Brandon Aiyuk might just have 3 catches in the Super Bowl. All right.
And you know, the thing about it is here's the bad thing. I don't want to get into a guessing game with the defensive coordinator as a play caller. I don't want, because he might have woken up on the wrong side of the bed. He may not be the guy that he has been all season long who I've got a book on. All of a sudden, the guy came out and he had scrambled eggs instead of Wheaties for breakfast, and he's a different guy. And now I can't get a feel of him because the same guy didn't show up who's been there the first 16 weeks. So I've got to have the flexibility with the receivers in the passing game to be able to call a pattern with a route in it that gives my guys options in case they can adjust to the coverages so that the coverage cannot stop what we want to do.